what Jan Hus asks of us now. So in my 20s, I was captured by the Solidarity uprising in Poland. I read everything I could find, and back then it was not easy to find stuff. But I was lucky. I was working my way through college at a grocery store, and because it was a union job, and because our union reps were also captured by what was happening in Poland, there were regular updates and newsletters, and our union rep would drop stuff by in the break room because they saw in the Solidarity movement a union of brothers and sisters organized for the well-being of people against the oppression of the evil overlords, not unlike how they saw themselves. So on break in between shifts, I would read this stuff, and over time I developed this image in my mind, a composite of a Solidarity organizer. And this guy, in my mind, was working away faithfully. He was hidden from sight, doing the work that eventually brought down the government. The shipyard strike in 1980, that was big news, but after the headlines faded, that's when the long-range work began. And this guy, in my mind, he's there and he's listening well to people, he's learning, he's building trust, he's teaching people how nonviolent resistance works, and he knows that the secret police are everywhere. And he knows that one slip and it would mean prison or worse. He's seen friends disappear, but he keeps showing up. The big strikes get the big press, but the organizing, the patient, relational, unglamorous work, that's what turned a nation. And it took decades, decades of steady, faithful work, decades. Building networks, surviving intimidation, surviving prison, growing a movement that challenged the state and eventually ushered in a democratic transition. It was only decades later, when the regime finally fell, that it became clear how important the work of my amalgamated guy was. So I think about that guy when I think about Hus. Because neither Hus nor the organizer, neither of them knew how the story was going to end. They did not know that reform would ever happen. Hus didn't know that history would vindicate him. All he knew, all the organizer knew, was the risk. Exile, condemnation, prison, fire. But they both kept showing up, patiently, courageously, faithfully. Hus did it in his time, the organizer did it in his, and their lives ask us to do the same in our time. So in this final episode, this is our question. What is Jan Hus's moral ask of us? And I think the first thing, given how we have framed this series, speaking about our attachment to what is true and good and beautiful and our commitment to that, I think that accessing that deep version of ourselves is the first ask. But it turns out that's not easy. It's not a sure thing. We might think that we have access to the source, the deeper self, but may in fact still be chasing some ego construct. The ego self is a tenacious thing inside of us. In my own life, many, many times, I was absolutely certain that I was standing for truth and I was on the side of goodness and beauty, only to discover later that I was defending my pride or my place or how people thought of me. So that is sobering. How easily we can get it wrong. How easily we can think that we're accessing the deeper self, but in fact be serving the ego self. So part of Hus's moral ask is discernment. Discernment. It's why I've emphasized the spiritual practices in this series, the ancient practices that help us discern, because discernment isn't optional. It's our only way to thrive in history's dark times. So his first ask, get quiet, be still, be a deep listener, be a learner, because spiritual discernment is a slow and disciplined art. It is the art of noticing what is most deeply true. What is true beneath the noise of ego and fear and impulse. Discernment isn't certainty hunting. Discernment is tuning in and listening well. It's listening to distinguish between conviction and reaction, conscience and anxiety, faithfulness and performance. Discernment listens for the whispers of the inner, deeper self, that deep place where truth and goodness and beauty speak. And then it tests what we hear. It tests it in the context of community, tests it in the context of our lived reality. So his first moral ask, discernment. Discernment cultivated through practice, through silence and stillness, reflective journaling, communal dialogue, wise counsel, examination of conscience. Which doesn't seem all that glamorous, doesn't seem all that courageous, doesn't even seem all that active. But it is foundational. His first ask, find the source of the kind of hope that does not depend on outcomes. A hope that can be sustained regardless of circumstance. A hope rooted in the whispers of the inner voice and the nudges of the deeper self. Okay, his second ask. The second ask derives from how hard this whole thing is. Let's be honest, discerning is not natural to us. Accessing the deeper self, not rushing into action, but instead doing the internal work first, it's at best uncomfortable. It's a little bit un-American. It is certainly challenging. It goes against our most basic cultural instincts. So his second ask is, do it anyway. Do it anyway. Because consider the alternatives. If we do not discern the true and the good and the beautiful, if we do not access the sustaining hope that we have been talking about, our options get very bleak. We can face burnout because we've run off without full understanding of what is at stake. We can be cynical, let everything go to hell in a handbasket and do it with a shrug. We can practice fearful compliance, just going along to get along. We can serve comfort instead of conviction and every day die a little bit inside as we do. My wife had a phrase raising our kids, what hurts and what hurts worse. The pursuit of the true and the good and the beautiful, it's hard, it hurts. But not pursuing them, not accessing them, not living from the source of that deeper love, that is harder. It hurts worse. So his second ask, do it anyway. Now, one thing that has kept me on this quest, kept me trying to discern and then honor the deeper hope, the love for true and good and beautiful, for the world as it could be, has been history. History has kept pointing me back to this quest to find that Hus kind of hope. Our nation in the early 20th century, so much corruption, so much wealth inequity, and then journalism, the muckrakers, and then the labor movement, and then women's suffrage. Activists risking their well-being to bend our society toward justice. Our nation in the 60s. Children marching in Birmingham, facing dogs and fire hoses, clergy writing from jail cells, organizers assaulted for registering people to vote, activists risking their well-being to bend our society toward justice. In South Africa, after apartheid, leaders and citizens bearing witness to the truth, forgiving what felt unforgivable, working toward a nation rooted in equity, bending their society toward truth and reconciliation. Well, the thing is, these are not outliers. They represent a recurring pattern in history. When hope seems impossible, faithfulness, persistence, collective courage eventually yield deep change. It has happened again and again and again. People get exhausted by the world as it is. An older generation clinging to that world finally dies off. New ideas and new stories and new norms and rituals representing the world as it could be start to take hold and change. But every single time, there are people inside that process holding on to hope, practicing discernment, and refusing to surrender their humanity. And that is Hus's moral ask of us. Access the deeper self and the faithfulness and courage that come with it. Resist the temptation to trade hope for any lesser narrative, and act without guarantee, without applause, without certainty. Plant seeds we may never harvest. Be steadfast in the face of institutional resistance. Help usher in the world as it could be. More truth, more goodness, more beauty. Systems do resist, they always have. But history also tells us when people rooted in discernment and sustained hope, when they act, they outlast systems. Hope prevails when enough people remain faithful in the uncertainty, committed to the deeper reality. And sure, we fall down, but we also get back up. And then we fall and get up again, and we do it again and again and again. That plants seeds that grow and one day become a harvest. Not always in our lifetimes, but harvest comes. So let me end the series this way. Jan Hus does not ask us to win, he asks us to be faithful. He does not ask us to control history, he asks us to participate in history, and participate drawing from our deeper selves as we do so. That's the point of this series. Tap the deeper truth. Do it without certainty. Do it without victory laps. Become the kind of people able to access that deeper hope and do it steadfastly and do it when the headlines scream otherwise. Do it motivated by deep love for the true and the good and the beautiful, for the world as it could be, and become willing to stand for that, though it costs us dearly. That is what Hus asks of us. And that is enough. Well, I hope you've liked this series. I've certainly enjoyed writing it. And if you'd like to get notified when I start the next one, go ahead and subscribe. I've already started penciling it out. It's going to be good.